this video, we're going to improve our game by adding proper level management, smooth transitions between scenes, and we're going to enhance player movement. So we're going to update how we instantiate our player, we're going to improve on our attack state, and then we're going to build out a level management system. So let's get right on into it. We have a lot to cover in this one. So a couple of things before we get into all of it. I did rearrange my file system a little bit. I didn't like how we had the scenes and scripts folders separate, so I just ended up breaking them out so I have characters, components, and enemies, and then everything is inside of here, whether it's a script or a scene. For me, it's just a little bit easier for me to manage and find different files. And then you can obviously, on the screen, I went ahead and built out the rest of the tile set for this test level. All of the assets are going to be linked in the description, and you'll be able to download this in the GitHub repository if you want. But otherwise, let's just briefly go through some of the updates that I did. I set up a lot of collisions for some of these new decorations throughout our level. I added a new house, which if we go in ground objects, this is where my house will be. Or is it in ground? It's in ground. No, it's in house. So this red house is set up a little bit differently than our blue house that we made. So if we click into this tile, when we go to do the animation, it's a little bit different. So we're using 4 columns, and then you can just go ahead and add all of your frames that way, which is slightly different than the 1 row of the blue house that we had. I also added some animated water tiles here. If you go into our ground here, I duplicated this tile set to keep it separate, but all of these 4 in a row here are actually all animated tiles. So the same thing here, if we click into this individual tile right here, we have 0 columns, but there's going to be 4 separation on the X. So that's how we are hopping over these 4 pixels here, and then we get to the next one so that we can animate all of these. Outside of that, I just built this out. I popped the bridge over here, which I think down the road, this could be a bridge that leads into another biome that we'll cover. And then, yeah, I just built this out, gave it a little bit of design. And if you want to see me in a time lapse build this out, just let me know in the comments. Otherwise, we're just going to be building the house interior at the end of this episode. So all that being said, let's dive into some code. The first thing we're going to do is a couple of changes to our game manager and our character script. So let's pop open our game manager script. We're actually going to change how we instantiate our player. So instead of doing it in this register character method, we're going to just do our ready method, and we need another variable. So we're going to have a variable that is our character scene. It's of the type packed scene. And it's going to be equal to a preload, and just look for your character scene here. Now, all we have to do inside of our ready is character is going to equal character scene dot instantiate. Other than that, we have to go back to the character script, and inside of our ready method, instead of this register character here, we just do game manager dot character equals self. It's a little bit different, but I think this is going to work better for us down the road. Then there was something that I brought up at the end of last video. So when we play this, you can slide after your attack animation when you're not pressing any direction keys. So I want to fix that. So let's bring up our attack state. And we're going to need to add a few variables here. So our first is going to be an export variable for our attack movement speed, which is a float, and we're going to do at 0.6. So our character is going to be moving at 60% of his speed during attacks. And then we're going to get our attack direction, which is a vector2, and we're going to default this to vector2.0. And then we're going to have our current velocity, which is a vector2, and it's also going to equal vector2.0. In our enter method, we just have to make one adjustment here where we set our attack direction inside of our enter method, and it's just going to equal our game manager dot character dot last direction. And then in our exit, we just have to do a little bit of cleanup on these variables. So we're just going to reset our attack direction back to vector2.0. Then we're going to do the same thing for our current velocity. Then we need to get into our game manager, get into our character's velocity, and also set that to vector2.0. In our physics update, I'm just going to get rid of this for right now. We're going to pretty much rewrite this whole thing. So we're going to look if our game manager.character.direction doesn't equal vector2.0. We set our current velocity equal to the game manager character direction. We're going to multiply that by our game manager character speed times our attack movement speed. Else we are going to set our current velocity to vector2.0 so that we stop. Then we need to apply the movement, so we get our game manager's character.velocity. We set it to the current velocity. And then we need to check if the attack animation is done. So not game manager dot character dot animation player dot is playing. Then we have to do a check on if our game manager's character direction doesn't equal vector2.0. Then we can state machine, change our state, and we're going to go into our move. Otherwise, we're going to go idle. In order to get this to work, we have to hop back into our character script for a couple of updates. So in our physics process, we need to do something after we get the direction, which do we have? We have a last direction variable assigned here. So we are going to first check if we're not attacking and our direction doesn't equal vector2.0. Then we set our last direction equal to direction.normalized. And then in our play animation down here, this line can stay the same. But we need to do another check to see if we're attacking. And our animation player current animation begins with attack. So all of our attack animations are attack underscore down, attack underscore up. So if those are both true, we're going to return. Otherwise, we play our animation. So now we should be able to play this, and you shouldn't have any more of this sliding. So now, as soon as I press stop, or as soon as my key on any of my direction keys are lifted up, even if I'm attacking, come to a stop. Now we're going to set up a level management system and a character spawn point. So right now we have to manually place our character in every single scene that he's going to be in. But instead of that, we're going to use a marker 2D node. So let's create that. And we're going to call this our character spawn. So let's change our type to marker 2D. We will call this our character spawn. And we actually don't need to do anything for this. This is just going to be a base node for us to use. And then we are going to go to our test level. We're going to delete the character out of here. And we're going to go drag in our new character spawn. And we're going to write some code so that all we have to do is place this individual point. And this is going to be where he spawns in any level. So we can have multiple spawn points too. It's all going to depend where the player is coming from, which we're going to continue to set that up. So that's actually all we have to do for the character spawn. But in order to actually use this, we need to keep building on this. So let's go add a script to our test level. We can just call this our level script. Let's give this a class name of level. And we're going to have an onReady variable of our character spawn. And in our ready method, we will build that out in a little bit, but we are going to need to do some level setup with a level manager that we're going to create. And then we are also going to need a method called exit tree, which we will also come back and build. Inside of our ready, let's check if we have a character spawn. So if we don't, let's push an error up and say must assign a character spawn for every level. Otherwise, we're going to go into our game manager character, and we're going to set the global position equal to the character spawn global position. So right now, this isn't going to do anything because right now we're just setting the positions to be the same, but we don't have an instance of our character actually in the game. So let's create another auto load. and we're going to call this our level manager. We can open that up, and we're going to have two signals in here. We're going to have level load started and another signal for level load finished. And we're going to create a constant for our starting level path. And it's going to be a string, and we need to go find our test level. We can just drag this in here. We have a regular variable for our current level, which is going to be of the type level. We're going to have our ready method. We're going to have two methods that are going to be connected to signals in another script, which we will write shortly. And this is going to be on transition started. Then we're going to have on transition ended, or on transition finished. And we're going to have another method for our level setup. And lastly, we're going to have a level cleanup. And both of these take in a level and they don't return anything. So in our level setup, what we're going to do here is we're going to get the current level. We're going to set it equal to our level. And if we have a game manager character and we get the parent, we game manager dot character dot get parent, we remove a child, and then we remove the game manager character. So if there's an existing character in our level, we are going to get rid of it. Then we go into our current level, we add a child, and then we add a new character. And then we want to admit our level load started. So let's add that right at the end of that method. In our level cleanup, we're going to do if level equals current level equals null. So now we'll be able to go back into our level script and use this level manager. But first we have to add it to our globals. So let's go find our level manager auto load. Add it. It should be below the game manager because the order does matter here. Then we can go back to our level, and in the ready method, we want to tap into our level manager, and then we want to do level setup, pass in ourself. So we're going to pass in the level. Now when we are going back and forth between levels, we want to make sure that there's a smooth level and scene transition. So let's create a new scene, and we're going to call this our scene transition. So we can save this. I'm going to save this inside of our levels also, but I'm going to create a new folder and just call this scene transition. And in here, all we're going to have is a color rect as our child node. We want it to be full rect so it covers the entire screen. And the idea here is going to be that we're going to do a fade in and fade out to and from black. So we want our default color though to be all black, but have an alpha of 0. And we want the mouse to, on the filter, we want it to be on ignore. And that's all we're going to have to do here. We do need to make this an auto load though. So this is going to be our first auto load scene that we've worked with. So just go find that in our levels folder, scene transition, and we're going to auto load scene transition. And note that this is the scene, not the script that we're about to make. So now let's attach a script to this, and we're going to have two signals here. Transition started and transition finished. And these were referenced in our level manager here. So we're going to connect these signals in the ready after we build out this scene transition. We're going to have an on ready for our color rect. And then inside of our ready method, all we're going to do is set the process mode to always. Then the only other method we're going to have here is what we're going to call transition to scene. We're going to give it a path, which is a string. It's not going to return anything. And we actually do need to create one more variable, which is going to be called is transitioning. And it's a bool, and it can default to false. The first thing we do in transition to scene is we check if we're transitioning. And if we are, we return. We don't need to try and do it again. If we make it past here, we set is transitioning to true. And now we want to make our fade to black. So we're going to do this with tweens rather than an animation player. So we're going to create a tween here, and then we're going to set the tween property on the color rect. and we're going to do the color alpha, 1.0, and 0.5. And we're going to wait for our tween to be finished. And we get tree. We change scene to file and give it the path. And then we're going to get our tween again. We're going to make a new one. So we're going to create a new tween. We're going to do the same thing here. Let's get this tween property again. Except instead of 1 here, it's going to be 0. And then we're going to end with 0.5. We're going to await for that tween to be finished. And then we can set is transitioning back to false. And we're missing 2 things here. So after this first tween finishes, which is our fade to black, we need to emit our transition started signal. And then all the way at the bottom, we need to emit our transition finished signal. And that wraps up everything that we need to do for our scene transition. And now that we have that set up, let's go finish off everything that we're going to have to do in our level scene right now, our level script right now. We need to check if the scene transition is transitioning. Then we do our level manager, level cleanup, and pass in ourselves. So we don't want to clean up levels during any of our transitions. Let's go finish our level manager script. So now in our ready method, we can connect these signals. So let's get our scene transition. We're going to do our transition started. We're going to connect to on transition started. Make sure to get rid of the parens. And then let's do the same thing for our transition finished and connect to that. Then in our on transition started, we're going to check if this is an instance. That is valid. And then we're going to give it our current level. And we're going to check that the game manager character has a parent. And if it does, game manager character, we get the parent. And then we remove the child, which is going to be our game manager character. In our on transition finished, we're just going to emit the level load finished signal. So to kind of make this all make sense, we need to actually build something to transition between levels. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to create an area 2D node, and we're going to call this our level transition. It's going to have a child of a collision shape, and we're not going to assign it in here. We're going to assign it to every level transition that we create inside of our levels. So let's save this real quick. I'm going to put this in the level folder as well. Make it its own folder. Let's save that. And let's attach a script to it. It's going to be a quick script. So the only thing we're going to need here is an export file. And we want to make sure that it's going to be of the type scene. So we need the star for, it can be anything as long as it ends in .tscn. We're going to call this our next level path. And it's a string. Then we're going to connect to a signal here. And we're going to do the body entered signal. And then when our character enters this, or when a body enters this area, we want to check if the body is a character. And we have a next level path. And we're not scene transitioning. And then if we pass all of those, we scene transition. And then we transition to scene. And then we give it our next level path. So in order to demonstrate how this all works, let's go back to our test level and let's create one of these. So let's go find our level transition. Let's just drag it in here. We need to add a collision shape, and then let's just give it a circle. I'm going to turn on collision shapes just so we can see and I know exactly where I'm walking into. So let's play this. So now, that didn't work because I need to actually update the level transition. It needs a collision layer, or it doesn't need a layer, but it needs to mask for our player. And we actually also have to pass in the next level path. So we're entering here. We weren't actually going anywhere because in the level transition script, we weren't passing in a next level path. So this is going to be how we're going to be able to pick and choose where our player goes based on what level transition they're running into. So now we can select here. I'm just going to select our same scene. So we're just going to more or less reload our current level, but just to show how we make this, let's play this. And then now we fade to black and we reload. Okay. So now we have our level and scene transitions set up. I am going to delete this though. And I want to do one more thing before we actually build out the interior of our house. So I want to make a script for our player camera. So right now, if you have a much smaller map, or if you remember when we were in the last episode, there was a lot of this gray space outside of our test level. This isn't going to be as clear on mine now because I have a much larger tile map, but we're going to make it so that our camera never sees that gray area, regardless of the size of your tile map. As long as you fill up a tile map that's bigger than our player's viewport, you'll never see that gray. So let's go to our character. We're going to find this camera. We're going to add a script to it. I'm just going to call this player camera. Let's give it a class name of player camera. And the only thing we're going to give it is a variable that's a tile map, and it's going to be of the type tile map layer. And then in our ready method, what we're going to do here is we're just going to do a quick wait. We're going to just do get tree and wait on the process frame just to make sure that our scene is ready. And then we need to find the main tile map that we want to use for our boundaries. So we're going to get a variable called tile maps, and we're going to get the owner, which is get tree, get the current scene, get node. I'm going to call this tile maps, which I'll explain in a second. And then we get all of the children of that node. So what this is going to be doing is in our levels, we need to have this node right here called tile maps for all of our levels moving forward. We're also going to need to assign a group to our main tile map. And what I mean by the main tile map is the furthest reaching tile map. So it's more likely going to be your ground of any tile map. So if I turn off the visibility for ground objects in house, you can see ground is my furthest reaching one. And what we're going to do is we're not going to check by the tile map name. I want to put this specific ground tile map into a group. So we're going to call this main tile map. We're going to make this a global group, and we hit OK. And now this square with a dot inside of it means that it's a part of a group. So in our player camera script now that we have these tile maps, we're going to loop through the tile map. And if map is in a group of main tile map equals map. So that's the one that we're going to use to figure out what limits we need to put on our camera. Then we're just going to set up camera limits. So let's make that right now. And then we do, if we don't have a tile map, we push a warning, no main tile map found for camera bounds. And then we return. Otherwise, we're going to calculate the boundaries from our tile map. So we're going to get what we call a used rect, which is a rect2i, and it's going to equal our tile map dot get use rect. And then we want to get our tile map size, which is going to equal our tile map dot tile set dot get tile size. And what we're going to do here is calculate where we are actually placing all of our pixels and the dimensions of that. So we're calculating how much space we're actually using with our tile map. So then we need to apply the limits to our camera. So we're going to do a limit left, and we're going to set this to our used rect dot position dot x. We're going to multiply this by our tile map size dot x. I'm going to do our limit top, which is going to be equal to our used rect dot position dot y times our tile map size dot y. Then we do our limit right, and we do the used rect dot position dot x plus the used rect dot size dot x. And then we multiply it by the tile map size dot x. And then we do our limit bottom, which is similar. Let's actually copy and paste this. And instead of x, we are just going to do it on the y-axis. So in order to show how this works, let me go back to my test level. And I'm gonna erase some of this over here so we don't have any water on the right side of the map. So let me go to, did I call this ground objects or is it ground? No, it's ground. Let me erase this. Okay, so now when I play this, you'll see that I can keep walking, but because I don't have any, I didn't set up the specific tiles for the water, but the tile map doesn't move. And then when I go to the bottom, it keeps going because my tile map, I still have tile map here, but now I'm just getting blocked by my tiles because I have a collision set up there. So now if I redo this, now I play this. Whoop, I must have undone something. What did I do here? Oh, I accidentally overwrote my level script. Okay. Now we're good. Okay, now you can see. That's as far as I can walk now, but we get more of the camera. This is just going to help us down the road. I think it's good for us to have. And now that we have that, let's build out our house. So let's make it so that we can use our new level transitions. And we're going to transition to allow our player to enter the house. So let's make, first and foremost, let's make a new 2D scene. And let's just call this character house. We're going to attach the level script to it. And now we need to make a new tile set. So we need to make a tile map layer. We need to go back into the inspector and create a new tile set. And for this one, let's go to our assets folder, environment, and we're going to go to our interior. And let's drag in the interior. You can hit yes on this. Okay. So let's try and build this out. It looks like black is going to be the background for this. So let's go to, let's grab this. That's just pure black. All right, I'm just going to make this pretty big and we can come back and trim this out depending on how big we want to make our player's house. And then let's give him this. Okay. Let's grab some walls here. We can do a little bit of this. Actually give some space in between them because we're going to need to wrap some banisters in here. Actually give this guy a window. Why not? Okay, and now that we have that set up, let's name this our house. We're going to put this in our group of our main tile map. We can save our character house into our levels. But let's still make this look a little bit nicer. So what we're going to do is we are going to bring in, let's add another child node. I'm going to make it a tile map layer. We also need to make a node and call this tile maps. Put both of those inside of that node. And then let's just call this house objects. Make a new tile set. Go to our tile set and let's put everything else. You can select yes, yes, and table objects. Okay. So now all of these things are going to appear on top of what we've already built. Guess I should make this look a little bit neater though with the black here. So yeah, I'm going to get rid of the chimney. We're going to use that in our house objects. Let's do this. Okay, let me quickly repaint that. Okay, now let's go to our house objects. We can bring in the interior as well. And now let's add some of this. So let's give ourselves a chimney. Can give ourselves a little bookcase. It might be a little too big. Can do that. We'll give ourselves a ladder so that down the road we'll be able to have a second floor of the house. We can put this back here. Let's just put it, I don't know, right there is fine. Now let's just give ourselves some table. Let's give ourselves a little table here. It's a little cramped. We'll do that in here. We will put a rug in here. Okay. And let's give ourselves a big chest. Decorate this a little bit. Okay, I think that's good for now. And now in here, we need to create our spawn point. So we need a character spawn. Let's put him right here. And so now when we walk in to our spawn point here, which let's make, so we need to create a level transition. We need to add a collision shape to it. Let's give it a rectangle. Bring this over here. That's fine. And then let's go to our level transition, and in our level path, we're going to pass in the character house. So when we save this, we can play this. All right, now we're in our house. So none of the collisions are set up, but now we are in our house, and now we should make the level transition so that we can leave our house. We're going to make this take us back to our test level. Let's add a collision shape. Go to our character house in 2D. I'm going to move the spawn a little bit further up so we don't accidentally put our character directly in the level transition. And let's do another rectangle. Where do we go? We're up here. Okay. Are we on the right collision? Yep. Why is this? We can't see it, but that shouldn't matter for right now. Let's just go in here, go into our house. Now we're back here, which we should really move this spawn to be right in front of our house so it actually looks like we're walking in and out of our house. Okay, so let's do a final test here. Yep, see, that's what I didn't want to happen. It's just going to keep spawning me in there. So let's move this a little bit to the front. Sorry, my character spawns. Put this right here. Now let's try it one last time. All right, it still did it, so I need to keep moving this. There we go. Okay, I think that about wraps this one up. I'd suggest going in and adding the proper collisions for everything in here before we get to the next episode, since I'll have that set up. And in the next one, we'll work on creating the cave and adding some more enemies so we actually have a little bit tougher of a battle for our character. While I was editing, I did notice that the tile maps weren't properly mapping inside of our house, so we have to make two quick changes to our player camera and our level manager. So in our player camera, we no longer want to store the tile map in a variable here. And all we're going to do is we're going to cut this out, and the ready method is only going to be these two things. And then at the top of our setup camera limits, we're just going to get a variable of tile map. It's going to be a tile map layer. It's going to equal null. Then we can take the stuff that originally was in the ready and bring it here, and the rest of it can stay the same. So by us storing the variable outside of the individual setup camera limits method, it was causing some problems. And then in order to make sure that we're properly resetting the camera limits, we have to go into our on transition finished. And before we actually emit that signal, we want to do await on a get tree for process frame. And then we want to go to our game manager, our character, and in our character, we need to bring our camera in as an onReady variable. So if you haven't done that, make sure you bring that onReady variable for a camera inside of our character script. And then in our level manager, we can access it by getting our character, then our camera, and then we set up camera limits. And so now when we play this, it will properly, I don't have my boundaries set or my collision set, but now you can see we are properly within the tile map limits.